In this video, I'm going to be revealing some of my favorite underrated wines. In one case, this is an entire region that I think is underrated, including both the white wines and the red wines. In a couple other situations, we're talking about wine from particular grapes in certain areas that I think are underrated. And in at least one other case, we're talking about a producer that I think is extraordinarily underrated. So there should be something for everyone, and there's also going to be a wide variety of price points in this video. Everything from as low as $20 a bottle to more than $250 per bottle or more. While Carignan is often just an afterthought in more of a blending grape, it's also capable of making extremely high-quality wines. This is particularly true when you're talking about old vine Carignan from places like Priorat in Spain. One example of this is Llach's Montella Rosa. Montella Rosa is 100% Carignan, and these special old Carignan vines were planted way back in 1910. Montella Rosa is a very special vineyard that's located in an area of Priorat at very, very high elevation. It has steep south-facing slopes, and the soils are the famous slate soils, or Llach soils, which have extremely rocky conditions and very, very low fertility. The result is extraordinarily low yields. These vines struggle incredibly hard to produce any fruit. It takes the fruit from 7 of these vines to produce just a single bottle of wine. The result is typically an annual volume of only around 1,600 bottles for this wine. There's only a handful of wines in Priorat that have the prestigious Gran Viña Classificata designation, which is the highest classification for a Priorat wine, and Montella Rosa is one of them. This is a wine that sells for around $250 per bottle now. Notably, however, there's still a number of bottles on store shelves from before the price increase, so you can probably find vintages like 2016 through 2018 on shelves for closer to $150, which makes it an absolute steal at that price point. If you're not familiar with what to expect from this wine, due to the high elevation and the old vines, this is an intensely concentrated wine, but one that has ample acidity as well. They use very gentle extraction techniques, so it's not overly tannic, and you can enjoy it even when it's young, but it will also age effortlessly for up to a decade or so. You can expect flavors and aromas of blackberry, plum, whetstone, sage, thyme, rosemary, pepper, licorice, and much more. A very complex and enjoyable wine. If you like the idea of trying an old vine Carignan wine from Priorat, but don't want to spend the full price to get the Montella Rosa, another option is the Clos Mogador Manyetes. Manyetes is a vineyard that's planted to 100% Carignan in the Gratayaps area of Priorat. This is a 10-hectare vineyard that's planted at 350 meters above sea level. They produce only around 3,000 bottles of this wine. It matures for around 18 months in large oak foudre, and this is one that will sell for around $120 a bottle or so. The next underrated wine is Loire Valley Cabernet Franc from one of my favorite producers, Catherine and Pierre Breton. The Bretons founded their winery back in 1982, and they farm 11 hectares of vines organically and biodynamically. Their vineyards are located just east of Bourgogne. They produce around 6,700 cases of wines annually, so they're still a fairly small producer, but they've been making incredibly high-quality wine for decades. I've had some of their wines from 2006 and 2008, and I had them with 10 to 15 years of age on them, and they were absolutely stunning. I enjoy a number of the Cabernet Franc wines produced by the Bretons. I'll briefly mention several of them here, but you really can't go wrong with any of them. One of their more entry-level wines is an easygoing Cabernet Franc that's produced from younger vines that average around 30 years of age. This wine is extremely vibrant and expressive, with bright fruit. It's almost gulpable, but it also has some structure as well. This wine is called Trinch, and it sells for right around $30 per bottle. Moving up a level, they also have a wine that's called Clos Seneschal. This is a wine that's produced from 70-year-old vines, and it's also 100% Cabernet Franc. This wine matures in barrel for 18 months before it's released. It sells for around $49 per bottle in the United States and about half that in Europe. This wine has ripe fruit with a velvety texture and also an earthy quality as well. An extremely impressive wine at this price point. They also have a wine that's called the Perrieres, and this impressive wine is produced from extremely old vines, Cabernet Franc vines that average 100 years of age. This wine matures for 2 years in barrel before it's released, and it's definitely an extraordinarily age-worthy wine. This one sells for about $28 a bottle in Europe, which is a phenomenal value, and about double that in the United States. The next underrated wine is Mencia from Bierzo, Spain, which is in Castilla y León in northwest Spain. Mencia is the dominant grape in Bierzo, with about 75% of all plantings. The best expressions of Mencia come from very old vines that are grown on steep hillsides. Mencia is an excellent alternative for those who enjoy Pinot Noir. They tend to show red fruit profiles, including red cherry and raspberry. They have a medium body with medium tannins and medium plus acidity. The best examples can be both ethereal and elegant. There's 2 expressions of Mencia that I particularly enjoy and that I'll be recommending in this video. The first of which is produced by Raul Perez, who's widely regarded as one of the very best winemakers in the entire world. This wine is called the La Vizcaina, and it received an impressive 97-point score from Robert Parker, despite the fact that it sells for only around $40 to $45 per bottle. This wine is labeled Mencia, but it's actually a bit of a field blend. It includes a little bit of Alicante Bouschet and some other local varietals as well. These grapes are grown on steep hillsides, and the vines average more than 50 years of age. It's important to be careful in terms of harvesting Mencia to preserve acidity, and just to make sure they preserve acidity for this wine, they use whole cluster fermentation. They also emphasize the purity of the fruit by maturing for only about 1 year in neutral oak. The result is an extremely impressive wine. The other Mencia that I really enjoy is also well received by critics year in and year out and sells for right around $50 per bottle, namely the Descendientes de Palacios Villa de Corullon. This wine comes in at around 13.5% alcohol by volume, and it's ethereal and full of energy. Really a very nice wine. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. Umbria has a predominantly hilly landscape. It's located in central Italy, and it's actually landlocked. It has a climate that's somewhat similar to the hilly inland portion of Tuscany. In Umbria, they grow some commonly grown grapes in central Italy, such as Trebbiano for white wine and Sangiovese for reds. But they also have some unique special wines that are the next underrated wines I'll be discussing in this video, namely the white wine Orvieto DOC and the red wine Montefalco Sagrantino DOCG. Umbria has a warm, mildly continental climate. It does receive 800 millimeters of rain per year, but this is mostly received in the fall and winter. The growing season is largely dry and hot. For that reason, there's very little fungal disease pressure, and many of the producers embrace organic principles. When you're talking about red wines from Umbria, the most important grape to know is Sagrantino. Sagrantino is grown on hillsides which range in elevation from around 220 to 470 meters above sea level. This helps with sunlight interception, as the Sagrantino grapes require full sunlight to ripen. Sagrantino is an extremely tannic grape. I compare it somewhat to Aglianico from Campania, but it has a dark fruit profile with blackberry and plum. It has high acidity and high tannins. Tannin management is extremely important when they're making these wines, and oftentimes it gets extended aging before it's released. The most important red wine in Umbria is Montefalco Sagrantino DOCG. The DOCG regulations require that this wine be 100% Sagrantino, and it has to mature for 33 months before release, 1 year of which must be in oak. But producers do take a different approach to that oak. Some producers will use new French oak barriques, whereas others will use large oak foudre, and then use bottle aging for an extended period of time as well. There's certainly a number of excellent producers of Montefalco Saguantino, but one of the most famous and one of the most reliable is Arnaldo Capre. Arnaldo Capre has a number of different expressions of Montefalco Saguantino, and any of them are worth trying, but one of the most widely available is the Clepiano. This wine sells for around $55 or so in the United States. It's a wine that will definitely cruise in your cellar for at least 10 to 15 years or so. When you're talking about food pairings for Montefalco Saguantino, one of my absolute favorites is a ribeye, as the fat from this rich cut of beef goes perfectly and helps to offset the tannic structure of the Saguantino. In addition to the Arnaldo Capre wines, I was at an Umbria tasting earlier this week at Italy, and another one of the favorites that I enjoyed there is called Boccali. This is a smaller producer, but they did a really excellent job with their Montefalco Saguantino, so you can't go wrong with this one as well. And this one is a little bit less expensive too. It sells for around $35 a bottle or so. If you're interested in trying a more approachable and less expensive Umbrian red wine, you'll definitely want to try Montefalco Rosso DOC. Montefalco Rosso DOC is a blend, and it typically consists of 60 to 70% Sangiovese, and there's also a decent percentage of Saguantino as well. But this wine is definitely far more approachable, and it's made in an early drinking style. Most of these wines are also much more affordable and tend to sell for more like $20 to $25 per bottle, even in the United States, and undoubtedly for less than that in Europe. The best white wines in Umbria tend to be those from the Orvieto DOC. Orvieto DOC wines have to be at least 60% Trebbiano and or Grechetto, and the fruit has to be grown between 100 and 550 meters above sea level. The higher percentage of Grechetto, the better the wine typically is, as Grechetto tends to have more flavor intensity and concentration. To find the best quality expressions of Orvieto, you definitely want to look for Orvieto Classico, which comes from the historic production zone, and also look for the word superiore, which has lower maximum yield requirements and which results in wines with greater flavor and concentration. When it comes to high-quality Orvieto, definitely keep an eye out for the producer named Barberani. Barberani has a wine that I particularly enjoy that sells for only around $19, even in the United States, namely the Barberani Orvieto Classico Superiore Castagnolo. This wine is 70% Grechetto and 30% Trebbiano. This is a mineral-driven wine, and it has a salty saline quality that I appreciate, and there's also flavors and aromas of citrus, lemon, and wildflower. It comes in at right around 12% alcohol by volume. If you'd like to learn more about Italian wines, I've published numerous videos on various Italian wine subjects, including Super Tuscan wines, Barolo, Brunello, Chianti Classico, and many more. So if you'd like to check those out, be sure to check out the playlist that's linked above.